All right, let's get started. It's 10 after. So what we're here today to talk about is design critiques in the classroom. We're going to talk about how they can be used and oops, there we go. We're going to talk about what they are, some procedures to get them up and running in your classroom, how students can give feedback, because that's really the most important part of this. And then some procedures as you're getting them started. I know when I started mine in my classroom, it did take a couple of sessions before students really got into how they worked and felt comfortable giving feedback. Then we'll talk about how to build norms and I hate to use rules, but procedures for your design critiques, because that helps the students to understand what their roles are supposed to be and what the expectations are for them. And then at the very end, I'll take questions and talk about some a resource packet that I'm going to be putting together next week and sending out to everybody, because I want you to have some type of some tools to be able to get you up and running with this, because I think this is a really effective way for for students to get feedback other than from you as the instructors, and two, it helps students to build their communication skills. Anytime we have discussions, I think you ask a question and then it's crickets in the room because nobody wants to go first, nobody wants to speak out, and so this is a great low barrier technique that can get students more engaged in other people's work, at their work. And it's also something that's used in a lot of design fields. So let's dive right into things. So what are design critiques? So design critiques have traditionally been used in a variety of our design fields, such as architectural, mechanical, and product design. Those are the three big areas where they're still significantly used. They're also used a lot in, I'm going to say, the artistic fields, such as, oh, what is it called? Of course, I'm blanking on the name now. More of the corporate art side, but also in a lot of your medium to larger firms for design stuff. My presentation is blurry. Okay. Is everybody seeing it blurry?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, you know what then? Let me do one quick thing and I will be back. I think I know why. So I'm going to disappear for a minute and then I'll start this over. Let me jump back to where I was. So traditionally they've been used in various design fields. And they're a great way for peers to give each other feedback, because quite often when we're designing something, we have unintentional biases or things that we have been working with for so long that we are just kind of blind to them. And so this gives the designer a chance to get unbiased feedback. The people critiquing it, they have no stake in the design. They're simply there to help the designer. And so what the design critique is, it's a process of showing off our projects in various states. They are typically aren't going to be in a finished state. Usually they're in a mid state, close to being done, or through the course of multiple design critiques, you may see a project through multiple stages. And what this does is it gives people the chance to get feedback at multiple stages. Because I know, like in my classroom previously, before I did this, students only got feedback at like 2 points, usually when they were setting up the design and then the finished product. And through the lessons I kind of learned through the COVID hybrid times, I'll call it dark times, if you will, there was a lot of feedback that the students needed but didn't know how to ask for, and I didn't really have a good mechanism to give it to them. So this is why I sought out this practice. Well, really brought it back from when I was working in industry and adapted it for the classroom. So this practice is quite often used by professionals. I actually was talking when I was teaching architecture several years ago. This, like, conversations with my advisory board in there is what sparked the idea to bring this back, and how it would be a useful feedback tool for the students. I also found over the last many years that students were not great about communicating, whether it's with me or with their peers. And so this is just another tool to help build communication skills and teach them procedures and methods for communicating. So let's talk about running a design critique. So first thing we do, and this will help give an idea of what it all looks like. Also, if you guys want, I can send out this presentation or put this presentation as part of the resource packet so that you guys can go over it later on. So what we do is, or what I do is, I remind everybody of my design critique norms, and I'll go over that, like specifically what they are in a little bit. And that's just a general reminder to everybody, because I always have that one or two students who want to make an obnoxious comment. And so this is a way to remind them to behave and what to say, what not to say, without singling anyone specifically out. And then what we do is, depending on the method that students are working in, either in a digital form or in a physical form, I have students take pictures of their work. I give them like 5-10 minutes to do it with their phones. And then I have a folder that students can drop digital work in. And we have a couple of carts that I bring out, or you can do this on some tables. Like if you have a shop, that would be a great place for students to put their work together in, like, because I have a bunch of the big square shop tables. So we take one or two of those and I have them put it around like the perimeter. And students can then take a look at it. Big thing I do is any names or identifying information I want left off of the project. We want the projects themselves, whether they're photos or physical, to be as anonymous as possible. The reason being is we don't, like, these designs aren't personal. We're not attacking or commenting on the designer. It's specifically on the project. And what I do is, by taking names off, students, I have found, don't pay attention to other people's stuff, which is, I'm going to use that. So by not having identifying information, they don't know whose stuff is whose. They will figure it out over time, but for the most part, they don't know whose is what. And so they're just giving honest feedback and not making it personal. That I find is the biggest challenge for students, is to understand how to give commentary on something without making it a personal issue. So then I give, as I said, I give students about 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes, depending on how organized the class is. That's really something you kind of have to read with your group of students. And then what I do is I will typically go through the digital projects first, and I'll just throw them up on my smart board, or you could use a projector. In the past, what I've seen other people do is have students bring it up on like a computer lab, and like different projects on different computers, and then we physically will move around the space as a group. If you have a larger group, like I have 30 students in my classes, so usually what I'll do is have them go around to the digital ones and the physical ones in groups of like 3 to 4, and that just kind of spreads them out. So I give them a review time to look over everything. I ask them not to touch the physical ones because we don't know what state they're in. they could be just barely held together with hot glue at times. And so we don't want to damage stuff because that's work that somebody else is going to have to fix down the road. So I give them some time, and then we come back together as a group. And what I do then is my role as a facilitator. I'm not trying to give feedback myself, but I want to lead the conversation. I want to make sure that students are staying on task and directing them to the different specific projects. So then what I do is I'll ask if anybody wants to go first, because we always have that one or two students who likes to go first, get it out of the way. And usually for the first couple of projects that I choose, I will call on the students. And one thing I forgot to say is I'm usually aware of who the designer is, and I specifically will not call on that student because I don't want them to have to give feedback on their own stuff, because that kind of defeats the purpose. But I will usually call on 2 or 3 students who will give some feedback. And then I try and call on those 2 or 3 quieter students so that they can agree or disagree. And then I simply ask them to say why they disagree, why they agree with it. And that way they can start getting used to giving feedback and start speaking in front of the class without having to come up with a lot of their own reasoning and information. I find this just helps to make it easier for them. And it gives them those tools that as we do this more and more, they have the tools to start engaging in the conversations more and more. Like this year already, we've done one design critique, and then next week we have a second one scheduled. So I try and do them every other week, usually on the off weeks of some sort of assessment. So what we'll do is we'll go through that. I will have probably, I don't know, 15 to 20 projects in a given time. I try to limit each session to about 5 minutes max. And then we move on to the next one. One thing I've also done over this year is I take, they're not 3x5, 4x6 cards. And I run them through our printer, and I'll print maybe 100 of them. And they're a feedback card, so that I'll pass out like 5 or 6 to every student, or the students can grab them as needed. And so when they're giving feedback, I also ask them to write down their feedback and which project it is. Because what I've done is one of the procedures we added is every project has a number, and that's how we identify them, so that students can write down their feedback. And that's just so that the designer student has something that they can look at with the feedback, so that they don't have to remember everything. And it's just a way for them when the session is over, they have something they can look back at. And then we basically just go through this process over and over. If I have a lot, I will actually do the design critique over a couple of days, just so we don't have to do more than about 10 projects at a session, because I find that is a little draining on the students having to think that much. And by the 5th or 6th one, we're getting a lot of the same feedback. So where the students give feedback. Copyright there. So what we do is I'm asking the students to give verbal feedback. Sometimes they'll need to go over to the project and point out certain things. And then I do ask them to write it down as well. So we're building some written communication skills as well as the verbal. But I ask them for what I call positive, actionable feedback. Positive meaning point out a positive thing about it, then you point out maybe a what I call a weakness, but not just pointing it out. How can it be improved? You know, if a design uses too big of a color palette or doesn't meet design criteria, instead of the student saying, well, that sucks, say, okay, this is a weakness, but it could be improved in XYZ ways. And I want it to be actionable. That's where that second part of the feedback comes into play in what can they actually do with that piece of feedback? How can they actually improve the project? And so this is to get students well, let me back that up. It's not just to get students to think about what they're saying, but what does their feedback do? What's the purpose of it? It's not just something that they're like a piece of information they're giving their peers, but it actually is used to improve the project. And I also, when I give them feedback, like on their assignments, I try and follow that method as well, because once again, like in the old days of drafting, you would get a circle on like a red circle on a section, and then some sort of note with it. And I've actually gone back to doing that with my digital grading. So I'm trying to add that feedback back in. And then the other thing we focus on is how do we give feedback without making it personal, because the feedback is about the design, not the person doing it. And that's a really critical thing. And it takes the students some time to get used to that. So the first couple of times we do this, I actually will let the student give the feedback and then help them reword it or wordsmith it to make it more actionable, make it less personal. And once they kind of see a pattern of how to do that, it gets a lot easier. Yeah, Kyle.
So with what you have going on, have you ever used Pear Deck or Nearpod? Have you heard of those?
Yep, I've used Pear Deck in the past.
Okay. Has with this feedback thing that you're, and you're critiquing, does that work for that?
It can. Let's see. I used Pear Deck when we were oh gosh, because time frames are a little funky now. I think it was 2 years ago.
Okay.
So I used it then when we were fully remote and when we were in our weird hybrid thing.
Yep.
Because at the time I had students in person and online. And that worked out really well.
Do you use it now? I mean, because I'm looking at it right now going, hey, how do I, because a lot of what we do now has to be documented, you know what I mean? And I'm assuming, since you said you had an advisory, your CTE.
Yep.
And so you then have a SIP that you have to submit. So, document, a lot of artifacts. So I'm just wondering how you could make, instead of having cards, 3x5 cards or whatever, how you can make it digital, download the PDF and submit it in your SIP.
Yeah, so one thing I've done, so we're kind of in a funky technology space. We have a new tech director this year. And so what we're still waiting on, like our Pear Deck subscription for the district to be renewed. So what I actually did, we use Canvas for our LMS, but I know you could do this with Schoology or Moodle. I don't know about Google Classroom because we never use that one. But I will, for the digital stuff, I will put up a forum and have the students post to there, and then the students can then leave comments in there as well.
Does Canvas work in a similar manner to Pear Deck?
I believe so.
I mean, do you find that it fulfills that need? Like, I believe our district already. I'm new to this district; it's my second year there, so they have Canvas. So I'm wondering if maybe I just am not utilizing Canvas in the manner I'd want to utilize Pear Deck.
I think actually the two complement each other really well. So Canvas, like we use it for our district-wide classes, like class postings, things
Yeah.
like that. It does have like the forums are pretty good. I think they call them discussions.
Mhm.
It doesn't have some of the robust features that Pear Deck has. So I'll actually put a link to the Pear Deck in my Canvas class as like an assignment, and then bump them over to that. But I found like last year I was using so many different digital tools. I'm
Mhm.
actually trying to pare down the number of tools I use. And
Yes.
even if it's not as good of a quality or experience, I'm trying to um, keep stuff in Canvas where I can, um, just to reduce the number of like logins and tools and different things the kids have to keep track of.
Yes. Yes.
But I mean, I think if your district or building uses Pear Deck quite a bit, that's a great tool to do it with. Um, there was another tool I used.
Nearpod.
Oh,
Nearpod is the other one that they have.
yep. We've also done it with like Padlet and Google Jamboard, which I'll show that in just a minute. I'm sorry.
I didn't know. I said okay.
Oh, I thought you were okay. Cool. Um, so those are some of the digital tools we use with it. I also like to, when I'm building all my different things, I want to have both a digital and I'll call it analog method for everything. Like I do all my handouts, for example, in Google or not Google Classroom, in Microsoft Office, like Word, because then they can be filled out online or done on paper. And so I try to do that with the design critique as well. That's why I have the note cards, just so that kids have can do it in either manner. Because like I mean, this past week I had 3 kids out with COVID. Not so much because they were like sick or anything, but because of the policies that we still have in place in our district. And so I had students attending the design critique, even though they were fully online. And that worked out really well too. So that's kind of another one of those lessons I learned from COVID is still having students participate, even if it's a slightly different time or if they're offsite, if you will, because then they still can interact with their peers. They still get the communication skills and still are keeping up with the class. So using design critiques in the classroom. So I like this method because one, it does help students improve communication skills. And that's, I think, the biggest part that makes it awkward for students at first is they're not used to communicating in a technical manner. They're used to saying things like, well, it's good, it sucks, I don't like it, I like it. But getting them to then explain why they don't like something or why they like something, that takes some time to build those communication skills. You know, I mean, like in our first one, my second years, their first questions were, does the design meet the basic requirements? Does it meet specifications? Is this an MVP or minimum viable product? Because they've already gone through this process. They know the things that when I'm assessing it, that I'm going to be looking for. And so they're already asking the first year students or their peers some of those basic questions. And because some of our projects, both first year students and second year students do at the same time. So they're kind of acting as a buffer for the first year students to help remind them, these are the things you really need to be hitting. And then that's also helping the first year students to understand the kinds of feedback and some of the explanation that they'll be expected to give. So like some of my first years in this first critique, they were like, I like it, but I don't know why. And that was great. I'm totally fine with that. Because before even I was able to jump in there, other students were jumping in and saying, well, I think I see where they're coming from. And here's why I think they like it. And that was a chance for other students to, or for the original student to then say, yep, that's what my thinking was. Or saying, I don't like it because I think the shape of it's funky. I try not to have them say, or get them not to say, well, it's wrong, because to me in the design world, no design is wrong. It just may not be the best that it can be. Because that's kind of tearing down a design. I want them to point out weaknesses, point out flaws, but then give feedback that's going to help improve it, because that's the whole point of this, is for improvement. And quite often, like especially with my freshmen who've never really had to do that much feedback like this, because they've had I mean, it's many of them were in elementary school when there was normal teaching. You know, they don't know how, they've never had really chances to do this. So I will help kind of ask them leading questions so that I'm not directly giving them an answer, but they do kind of get there on their own. And then I also remind the kids that, you know, whatever happens here, it stays here. It like in the critique, I mean, you know, say what you want. If you need help figuring out what you want to say, that's totally fine. But once it's over, it's only the designer that is taking things away. So even if you don't necessarily know what to say something, because that's still better than nothing. And then as I said, yeah, asking those follow-up questions or leading questions, more to get the kids to think about what they want to say. And the more you do it, other kids will be figuring out what they want to say as the whole process goes through. And the kid, after about 2 or 3, the kids get pretty good about giving feedback. They kind of learn how the system works, if you will. Then when we talk about improving student work with this, what I will do is after every design critique, I will go through and as the students have general work time, I'll meet with the students and just kind of ask, okay, you were given this feedback. How can you integrate it into what you're currently doing? And that's really just a check-in with them to make sure that they've looked through the feedback or processed it in some way, and then using it to actually improve their design. Because there's no point in doing all of this. I mean, yes, you get the benefits of improved communication skills, but if it's not going to improve their design, then there isn't a lot that we got out of this. So I want to maximize that by meeting with them, checking in with them, and seeing how they're using the feedback to improve their design. I want to see that, you know, have they made a checklist of tasks that they need to go through, whether it's thinking about the design or reworking something or just changing their design in some way. I want to see that they processed it and used it. Even if, I mean, they may say, well, that piece of feedback is full of crap, I don't agree with it. That's fine. I've had that happen. And then as we're getting used to this and the students are doing it more, I found that, especially with presentations, students are actually using the process at home when giving a presentation to the class. They'll actually go through and use the critique process with their friends or with family members to see how they're doing with everything, or just as a practice kind of thing. And what I do is it's a half sheet of paper that explains what it is, and the students have access to that they can then give to friends or family members to explain what we're doing in class and how they can use it on their own. All right, now we always end up having a couple of students who don't respond. That's, I cannot tell you how many years I fought with students who don't respond to questions or just don't actively participate in class. And I found that that was for a couple of reasons. One, they don't have interest in what we're going over. Two, they don't have the communication skills. Or three, they haven't done the work. So they don't have anything to add to the conversation. And I think that students are very aware of these things. I think that they want to be part of the group. They want to follow the herd and be a part of it, but they don't feel like they can bring anything to the conversation. So what I like to do is, as I said earlier, during a specific critique, let a couple of students who have stuff to say go first. And then this gives the students who aren't typically participating or responding the chance to say, well, I agree with that, or I don't. And then I ask the leading questions. I kind of guide them into a little bit more of a response without giving them a direct answer. And my favorite question to use for this is a simple why. You know, if I've had one student, I asked that too, and he said, well, I want to say it sucks, but I know we shouldn't be doing that. But I don't like this, or this. Okay, why? And I've gone through a couple of rounds with that. And I know the students find it frustrating when I do that. But it elicits those responses and gets them to dig a little bit deeper and give more concrete answers. And it gives them a chance to do this without looking silly, without being embarrassed. And it also builds the relationship between you and the student, but also the students and the larger class as a whole. Because I mean, I've had students who will only like talk openly and communicate like this in my classes, where we know we've gone through processes and talked back and forth and given feedback. And I mean, they won't do that in like an English class or a math class, because those procedures and processes haven't necessarily been developed. So how do we build this in your programs? Well, one, and I'm going to get you guys some more information, like concrete handouts and things like that in the packet that I'll be sending out next week. You know, the focus should be on improving student designs. I know many of us bring projects to the MITES design competition every year, or student competition. You know, that's a great place as you're building out those projects. You know, give them the rules, ask them, like, use that as a focus for one design critique. Tell them what project category that it's in, and say, okay, what do we think? Does it meet the rules? Does it not? If it doesn't, how can we help the designer to modify the project to get it to fit into those rules? I found that students are going to be much more critical of a design than I ever will. Just like when I ask them to give general feedback on their own work, they're going to knock every single thing that could be possibly found. And then I usually will have to say, nope, that's okay. Your project isn't as terrible as you think. And so then also reminding them that the feedback is about the design. It's not about the designer, and it's not personal. That, you know, I found that the kids always want to, I don't want to say attack, but give feedback on the person, not the thing. And so getting them to do that and understanding how to receive feedback, that's probably one of the hardest things, because they've never really had to do that. They'll get feedback from teachers on their assignments, and some, even take that as a personal thing. But I think teaching them how to give and receive feedback is an important process because um, in any job, you're going to get feedback. But it's usually not personal, especially as a professional. I mean, we all get reviews, and some of that feedback that we'll get is constructive, some of it is not. So I try and get students to build those skills on how to give feedback, but then also how to take it. What do you do with that feedback? When do you know what feedback to use, what feedback to possibly ignore? Because some of the feedback, I mean, we've seen it in our reviews. Some of it is somebody's off base. So how do you make those decisions? And then this is where I also talked about giving the written feedback in card form. I am trying to figure out a solid way to do it digitally because I do have a computer lab in my area connected to my shop. I'm really trying this year to figure out how to do as much stuff digitally as I can because I've realized I hate paperwork and clutter. It's just more mess and stuff. And honestly, it's less stuff for the kids to carry around. And I think that makes their lives a lot easier. Plus, it's also something that they can refer back to down the road. It's evidence that they have. I know Kyle was talking about document everything. I'm trying to teach the students to do that because whether they need it now, need it later, even way down the road, they still have that documentation. I mean, honestly, Google Drives, they're cheap. The storage is cheap now. So save everything, organize it, utilize it down the road. Because one of the things we're also going to be implementing later this year is portfolios for student work. That will probably be a presentation for next year as I'm trying to work out bugs to that process. So
Make that a Google site.
yeah, we're looking at doing that.
Yeah, show them how to do a Google site and make it a digital portfolio.
Mhm.
That's everything you're saying goes hand in hand with what I do. I tell them, hey, you know, if you're in the CTE class, the year-long class, at the end of it, your final exam is making a web page that showcases everything you've done. And I explain that day one, which reinforces the documenting process. Because I say, hey, listen, if you don't have any like old AutoCAD drawings that you should have done in the intro class, like you're going to have to redo some of those on your website because I want them to know that you know both softwares or multiple softwares. So it's that documentation process. But by declaring that's going to be your final exam on the first day of school, that's going to reinforce that documentation process.
Oh, that's a great idea. I may steal that.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, they really, you know, I say, hey, listen, you don't want to be going back and doing, you know, old drawings at the end so that you have something to fill in that requirement on the website.
Professionally borrow, not steal.
Right, right.
I like that.
Great idea. Thanks, man.
Yeah. And you know, also that fulfills, I'm trying to think of which it's something in our CTE audits.
Yeah.
Can we call it leadership? Would that be a student leadership component?
I
don't know
think
that you
so.
could do that in Navigator or GEMS or whatever, but you know, like listed as that, but I don't see why you couldn't put that as evidence in there. I mean, you know, you probably need some more stuff in there, but yeah, I mean, it is all student based. I also have them present their website and then I have them critique the website, basically hand in hand with everything you've been saying this whole time. But it's a good culminating piece, you know. And then the kids, they complain about it sometimes, but then I'll get an email come fall that'll say, hey, I just got a job because of that website you had me make. And then I show that email to the kids in class and it just kind of the cycle continues. So
well, you know, that's the big thing. So the last couple of years in our whole CTE department, we've been focusing on how do we have a lot of kids that go into the college track with everything. How do we get more kids into, like, and especially those alternative, I'm going to air quote that, kids, how do we get them into right into the workforce if that's what they want to do? How do we get them into internships? How do we get them into the military if those are the career routes they want to go? And so like we've been this year's project for us is how to build portfolios.
Mhm.
But like last year, we started doing what we call the interview project, where we get all of our advisory board members together, which ends up being about 70 people. And every 11th grader, I'm sorry, 10th and 11th grader in the CTE program goes through an interview, like a mock interview with a professional, and then gets feedback on it. And we've last year we had 9 students get jobs out of that. And I think that's another great thing that that we as CTE teachers and industrial tech teachers can do to actually get our kids like real world stuff.
Right.
Because I think, you know, this whole thing of every kid goes to college, I think, I don't want to say it's crap, but I think getting them some kind of post-secondary something, whether it's a certification, whether it's college, whether it's the workforce, but we want to make them what I'm going to call viable adults. You know, get them where they can get a job, where they can support a family, where they can build out a life that is going to be productive for them, whatever that looks like.
For sure. Like Perkins 5 is all about certs. I mean, like
Mhm.
my boss is cramming certs down our throats right now because that's what Perkins 5 is all about. So I mean, that's the direction they're going in. They want everybody going through CT program to walk out with something to show. So
Yeah, well, that's the certification process. We have, I think it's our business program has to implement their certs this year. And so, and I know, I think it's engineering is next year. So we're starting to like build out those processes. All of the programs are helping our business department build their process, because we're going to end up having to use it. And so if we have one process that we all use, we all know how it works. So one thing, I'm going to drop this link in chat, because I don't know if you guys can grab it from there. Where is my chat window? There it is. So this is Google Jamboard. This is another tool that I use. As I do more of these presentations, I'm trying to showcase various digital tools for everybody. This is, I mean, think of it like a whiteboard or Padlet or Quizlet. You can drop in comments on here. I think everybody has access. Yeah. Okay. And others can see it. And then, so what I will do is I will have students bring this up, and you know, students will put in their comments on there, and then I just tell the students, like whoever's project is up, take a screenshot of that. And I mean, we're a PC based lab, so I'll show them the alt print screen, or have them use the snippet tool built right into Windows to grab that screenshot, and then they have documentation for it digitally right there. And students' names aren't attached to it, I don't think. Oops, did I? Yeah, here, let me put that here. I forgot that was the wrong window. And so it's basically like a digital whiteboard. And then, or what I'll have sometimes is just share specific ones with students. Excuse me, what I'm trying to get towards is more a method of scheduled critiques, where we know we have a critique coming up, and just to kind of reduce the number of projects we're going through at any one time, have a calendar and say, okay, 5 students have to schedule their critique. But I'm also doing more calendar-based scheduling stuff with, like, I have a limited number of 3D printers. So if students need to 3D print something, they have to schedule and book time on it. And this is just another way to build students' administrative skills and things like that. So any other general questions from you guys?
Yeah, it looks like, I don't know how many people are CTE, but as you're thinking about doing these videos and things that would really serve well, I would appreciate more, if I want to say CTE targeted, you know what I mean? I'm like I say, I'm new to the CTE realm. So anything that can be, you know, talked on as far as like the SIP and stuff like that, would be appreciated. What people are doing in their classes to take and address some of that stuff. You know, like example, one of the things I want to tackle this year, in the era of high building costs and construction, and how do you get kids
Oh, I lost your audio there, Kyle, for a minute.
Gotta love Zoom,
as
right?
far as going to classes, you know, I don't know.
Oh,
So anything related to that would be awesome.
Say that one more time, Kyle. We lost you midway through.
So anything like you know, CTE related, and how to fill out some of this paperwork that, you know, kind of becomes you know, a root canal at the end of the year. So I mean, my thought has been, how do I make this as passive as possible? Like I like to take and set everything up digitally, so
Mhm.
that way at the end of the year I'm downloading PDFs of the information that I've already got done and just dragging it over, dropping it in, because it's already done. It's just a matter of pulling the PDF because I've already done it. Like,
Just
how do
don't
I
forget to
move?
change the year.
Oh no, I'm
Yeah.
telling you.
Oh,
No,
and I'm
no.
joking because I do the same thing and I download it, I change the year and then upload it right back up. I mean, that's been
Yeah.
almost
No.
years and years of just doing that. Download the PDF, change the year, upload it right back up. And unfortunately, it's the hamster wheel we have to run in for a lot of this stuff, you know?
Is that what it is? Because
Yeah.
I've been doing like every year with the curriculum that I walked in and I had to develop the whole curriculum. There was nothing developed, which blew my mind, because then I looked at the SIP that was submitted and went, how did they ever keep funding with this SIP? This is, you know, a leaky sieve. So last year was a ton of work. And this year is proving to be the same, because I'm looking at articulation agreements and going, how did anybody, there was no curriculum. How do you get an articulation agreement with no curriculum? You know,
Well,
so
yeah, I think that's been the problem for a fair number of programs, and I think why the state is kind of cracking down and being more deliberate with a lot of the documentation and paperwork. I mean, I won't mention a name or anything, but I know a school in my region that basically took the numbers, like all the dates off everything, and submitted the exact same stuff for
Yeah.
about 10 years. And I mean, if the information doesn't change, that's one thing. But I like to, I mean, I basically kind of built templates for a lot of my stuff. And actually the templates that GEMS now has, they're actually pretty good. They're easy to follow. I know Mike's borrowed the CTSO stuff for that documentation. And yeah, so I think to me, just having a checklist of how, like, to answer your original question, I made a checklist for everything that I know I need to include, because I've done it for many years now.
I've
I
done
mean,
that.
like, things like my certification doesn't change, but like getting that, I just got my advisory board together for the year. I want to have middle of October, we're going to have our first meeting, and then probably in February, March, we'll have our second one. And those are my formal ones. I do also email my group throughout the year whenever I have to make a big change. And I like email because then it's a written documentation thing.
Yeah.
As for doing specific things for the CTE, we are looking at putting together I guess tracks for the different like groups like CAD drafting, engineering, woodworking, metalworking, so that we can develop content for those different areas, whether it's
Did you-
written or
did
meetings
you
like
know-
this.
I just found this out, and I don't know if this is a fairly new thing, but I'm digging deeper into it. That the publisher, it's Goodhart Wilcox.
Mhm.
They have the digital version of the book that you get licensed for 6 years,
Mhm.
and they have an online learning management system that is involved with that. Is anybody doing that?
Yeah, definitely. Matter of fact, I've been doing that a couple of years, and it's.
Do you like it?
Oh, yeah, I love it. It's fantastic.
Okay,
Yeah, their
awesome.
digital books and workbooks are really good. We've been using their book 4 years now. And the thing that I'm really quite surprised about is they actually update it from year to year. I don't think I would ever go back to having a physical book ever again.
So what you're telling me is spend the money, it's worth it.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't, Ron, maybe you can weigh in too. I think it was cheaper to do the digital one than the physical.
Yeah, because matter of fact, I just turned in my rec. It was like $2,600. But the manual books, that actually with the classroom books and 2 sets of courses, like $16,000. But when I was audited last year, they accept the electronic version as an updated version textbook.
And you know what?
Okay.
It's that much physical space that's not taken up by books.
How is the learning management system part of it, the workbook part of it, as far as the teacher end? Is it easy to use? I mean, with the one more thing to learn, right?
It's really simple. It's really
Okay.
easy to learn, and there's actually links for you and videos. And you'll love it. I don't think you'll ever go back to a regular hard book again.
Okay.
Unless you like that type of learning.
No.
Or for options for kids to take home. If you can get the book back. I've been running in for the years, trying to get a book back. If it's special, an IEP, and they have to have a book
Mhm.
with them. But, yeah.
Mike, you have a
Awesome.
question? Oh, I'm
Well,
sorry.
I had a comment. Is going back to when you guys were talking about articulation and re-putting your stuff up on the CTE sites and stuff. Yes, there are some of those files that you can just change the dates and put back up, but you do have to be very, very careful, especially with articulation agreements, because the colleges are always changing stuff. And I'm fortunate enough that, like David said, putting together checklists is very important. I'm fortunate enough with where I'm at in a career tech center, we have people that have those checklists together for everybody in the building and help us remind us. So when we're doing our articulation agreements, they'll point right out to me. It's like, you know what, they changed all these classes. We need to update these things. All this stuff has to be redone. So yeah, I have to go back through and reevaluate stuff. I need to go back through and redo the steps because I know we're getting to the point of switching over. So, if I can't just follow the same steps every year. So reviewing it is
Yeah.
important to do.
I agree with you. What we do for ours, our CT Center has a shared Google Drive with a specific GEMS folder, and we put documents in there that can be used universally across the board. I've done all the classroom layouts for the one about space and barrier-free access, all that stuff that's in there. So we have a big drive that we put everything in. I was just more referencing like the equipment, if you didn't get anything new, the classroom layout typically doesn't change, that kind of stuff. But
Right.
yeah, like I said, all the stuff that all the fun stuff we get to do every year, right?
Well, I want to say it because if Kyle's new at this stuff, it's like, we
For sure.
don't just copy and paste stuff. You might want to look through
No,
and get a
and-
better understanding.
Well, and that's I right now I'm in I'm in 2 courses right now in college for Ferris State for the full piece. Right now I'm doing the annual author. Does not seem like a roller coaster continue to be on. And then to be honest with you, I have been taking and doing a deep dive, and I did a deep dive last year, and so this is all. I think I have everything in place but I was in a review last year too. So on top of being my first year, I ended up having a review. And so, perfect storm. So I ended up having to, make sure that everything was there by the end of the year and aligned. And it was, like I said, a busy year. So some of the curriculum stuff I know can stay the same, because the curriculum is going to change now, although I'm reviewing books from, again, Goodhart Wilcox, to change what I've done. So I'm just wondering how much of this stuff, I mean, I'm definitely willing to, bring stuff to share at the table. I'm just wondering how we can make that happen, because it sounds like you guys, have stuff, have documents that I'd want to look at to see if I can pull our district into compliance and beg, borrow, steal, whatever to get them, because right now with my year of experience, believe it or not, there have been people there that have been there longer, and I'm the guy they come and ask now. And some of this stuff I'm going, well, I do what I can, but I'm not claiming to know it all either. So if I can tap people to share information, I don't know if anybody's willing to set something up like that. I'd be happy to share what I've got going on.
Would it be useful, just as I'm thinking down the road, to maybe have like a roundtable discussion about GEMS and what kind of stuff we could maybe as mites set up for everybody to help get them through putting all the information together?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
CTE for me, the paperwork end at the end of the year, like I say, it can be overwhelming. I want to figure out how to make it not overwhelming.
Yeah.
How can we make a SIP as easy as possible? And if somebody's already doing that, I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. Well, one person that helped me early on is talking to, because everything comes through our ISDs. They're
Mhm.
going to have a compliance officer that is the person that is the final say on a lot of this stuff. So several years ago.
Unfortunately, every time I try to have that conversation, they say, yeah, you don't want to talk to her. And I said, well, the problem is I don't want to, I want to talk to the professor, let's say, because you don't know what the professor wants till you talk to the professor.
Yep.
And then you can hit the target. And so I'm trying to hit a target when I've never talked to the professor.
Well, that's what I started doing, is just emailing questions, knowing that I'm going to get a big long answer, but then having phone conversations and asking that person questions,
Mhm.
and building that relationship. Because we just had something, I forget what it was, with one of our other programs where they were out of compliance and didn't understand what the essentially ISD was asking for it. They just called directly the compliance person, and that person walked them through a really in-depth explanation, but they ended up figuring out that answer. And so I think having more of those conversations, not with like our CTE directors or local admins, but just frankly jumping over their heads and having them right with the ISDs, is a better way to do things, in my opinion.
100%.
David, I'm going to agree.
100%.
I'm going to agree with you a little bit on that too, because especially in a high school setting, they give you that level 5 person. That level 5 person is like an assistant principal or whatever, and you're the only one that he has to deal with as far as CTE certification stuff. That's a small little portion of his plate that he's got to deal with. So yeah, he doesn't know what's going on. He's not involved with it more than that little bit. When I was at a high school, my problem was my director never went to any one of those meetings that they always had for going over the SIP certifications. And so then he and I would have arguments, because I'm like, this is what they're telling us, and why weren't you there? And he's like, you don't tell me my job. And so then it didn't go well. So I agree with you. I think Mites has got a perfect opportunity here where we could start putting together maybe little snippet Zoom videos like this early on in the year and go over portions of it and get everybody that's having to do the same kind of concept. We can all be on the same page and kind of help each other out.
Yeah, big giant meeting, and then you could do breakout rooms by zip code. you know?
Sure,
Break
that'd
it
be
down by
cool.
SIP and jump us
That'd be
into
awesome.
our individual SIPs and then go through, and then we can all say, hey, who wants to throw stuff up? Who wants to share stuff? Maybe even make a shared drive or something that everybody can drop stuff into, because, you know, all of us seem pretty cool. I think everybody's cool with sharing their stuff. Like, you know, if there's
Yeah.
ever anything somebody wants to see of mine, it's totally cool by me.
Yeah.
And I think most people will probably have that attitude towards it. And if not, and then they can figure it out themselves, I guess.
Yeah, excellent, Steve. Matter of fact, our building this year is doing a shared drive.
Nice.
Even though we have different SIPs, but as far as like drafting design, it's great just to share and you know, just because we're all together, and
Right.
it would be very helpful. And especially our first, you know, our first deadline is October 21st in that range, and then we're going to do it each month, and so that everybody is completing their track
Right.
successfully. So, one
Yep.
other thing I want to add real quick.
Sure.
David, thank you so much. We had last couple of years, quite a few years, I've been doing the pinnable. I had pinnable surface for presentations for my transportation design and everything. But what you gave today was excellent on the norms and having that system and not trying to use the designs as an attack and to have some type of the communications and that skills that the strategies is spot on. I'd like to use your stuff and write it up and have that as a great format for this year, if you don't mind. And then
Oh, yeah.
also, I've always did the manual, the portfolios, but I want to also offer an option as the digital. And I know I've been working with CCS, but I just want to reach out to anybody here. Is anybody doing a digital portfolio, and what are you using?
I taught a computer class a year ago before I took the CTE job, and we used Google Sites. It's right in the Google kind of your Google suite. Super easy to use. It goes right along with their Chromebooks and everything else. Great part of that, and so there is a little learning curve to it for the first and then you got everything down and you're like, okay, I got this. All you can do is go in and build yourself a site and how you would want it to look. And then once you build yours, then you just teach them how to build theirs.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
And
and
it's free.
one recommendation I have on that is have them create an outside Gmail address to do that with. And the reason why is after they graduate, they lose access. So the first couple of years I did it, I said, use your school account because we're a Google district, everything's Google. So I said, cool, use your school account. So they created that site. Then all of a sudden I'm getting peppered with share requests to allow that to be shared out because the district started blocking that. And then after a certain point, after they graduate, it's just gone. So the kid will have to port it over. So I just got to a point where I have them do it through their own personal Gmail account if they're willing to do that, you know, and go about it that route, because then I have kids that, even no joke, continue to build on to it through college and use that as the base. And then they just continue on adding stuff to each. We break it down by competency. So we usually break it down by, you know, like detailed drawings, assemblies, animations, rendering. So they have a tab for each one of those, and then they go through that, and then they can keep building on that. And that's not always the case, but like we were talking about employability stuff, being able to fall back on that and add to that and keep building on it has been a good thing. So.
And I'll add to that, but I have them make sure they put stuff on their Google, because we use Google Classroom. So I have them put all their stuff on Google simply for, especially with CAD programs. If they've got a system at home and have been able to download the student version at home, now they can have access to their files both places. But at the end of the year, same problem we have is that, you know, if they graduate, they're going to be gone if they don't save it. I'm going to go through the process this year of getting actual flash drives and just tell them, I want you copying everything onto your flash drive so you have it. You have a hard copy of it that's in your pocket that you can't lose when you go somewhere.
I will add this too. I took in with the SIP and Google Classroom, or not Google Classroom, Google Sites. I broke the SIP down by category and made a Google site. And then I was able to add each PDF. And so then when I went to fill out my SIP, I had the Google site up on one screen and put up the other screen with the SIP, and I drag and dropped and that's how I did my SIP. So I kept digital artifacts throughout the year that I thought would represent what was asked for of the SIP. And really, to be honest with you, for the first time in the first review, she only had maybe half a dozen critiques that she could offer. So I don't even know, that might be good, that might be bad, I don't know. But that's how I went about doing it.
I'm thinking that's good.
Yeah. The
think
one
that's
thing
good.
I know is, so when we exported out like a Google site, I've had several students take it to, like, they bought a WordPress domain or Squarespace or some of those. It'll import just through an automated process too, so that they can use it that way.
For sure. Yep.
We're
Yeah,
actually looking at,
our district, because it's tied to that account eventually gets closed and everything
Yep.
in it is just gone. So yeah, I do the same. I mean, my website's a Google site, and then I just bought a URL and linked it, and you know,
Yeah,
I pay for it, but I found out .org is cheaper than .com, so I think it's like $10 a year or something. You know.
mhm. What we're actually doing is we're trying to get our ISD to set up. We know they have a WordPress server, seeing if they'll give us a WordPress account for every kid, and then that's what I'm looking at using.
That'd be cool.
Well, you keep in kind of a mind Skills USA. I'm just now starting to go through that, and because I'm trying to add both my pet projects this year, work-based learning and the leadership component. Again, areas she dinged me. So I'm trying to address many of those areas to get less red marks. So if we can at some point have a discussion on those in the future, that'd be great.
So mites in the coming, we were looking at, if after this last week's Saturday meeting, membership meeting, we were hoping to release our CTSO stuff. We're double checking a couple of things because there were some questions raised about being fully compliant with that leadership aspect. But probably in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be releasing the documentation. Mites is an approved CTSO by the state now. And so we're going to be releasing that for you guys to build leadership chapters. So Kyle, the student leadership conference that I think we're opening up at the end of this month for people to use. So students will be able to go in and do videos like this on leadership. That meets that leadership component. And then the CTSO, you'll be able to have a chapter that you can run during your classes, and that meets the other component as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and Kyle, if you ever want to talk
Well,
skills, I'll put my email address in the chat. I run architecture for skills. I've been doing skills and mites for 18 years each.
Okay.
You know, and I've done skills forever. I've done mites forever. I love both. One's, you know, for a handful of kids, and mites is for everybody. And that's the way that I kind of look at it. And I run architecture here. So if anybody wants to do architecture, I'm dying. Nobody wants to compete anymore. When COVID decimated it, and I took it over in 2020, and it's been rough. I mean, I got like 3 schools that'll compete. You know, but it's a good thing. It's like the same as mites, but the complete opposite. You know what I mean? And I love both. I love both because I get to have all of my kids do mites. I actually force them. I force them to do it. We do like a fantasy football draft and pick categories up the ladder, down the ladder. And then, you know, skills is for my kids who are that. And I did skills. I've been doing 3 competitions for years. Automated manufacturing technology, architectural drafting, and technical drafting. So, and like I'm a chair, I run architects. I've done it all on that one. So anything you need, I'll put my email address and, you know, let me know.
Yeah.
If you're looking for a less expensive competition, you can also look at Square One Education Network as well.
And if you're looking for a good drafting one that you can do over a longer period, there's the ASB vehicle design.
Yep.
There's another one.
Ferris State runs a couple, I think, and I know Ferris has a couple. Like they do a big welding one. I think they added a CAD one not too long ago. There's quite a few around here, for sure.
I will say though that anybody that's been looking at as a competition to meet that leadership component. I know the ISDs are saying that does not fully meet it anymore.
Oh,
It's
which
still,
one?
what's that?
Which one doesn't meet it?
Pretty much all of them.
Oh, okay, I got you.
That's why, and that's why MITES is moving to these other things to help members meet those leadership components and things like that. But I think there's still a great experience for students to compete against others and say, okay, this is, that's the thing. In education, we don't have healthy competition. I think that's a great experience for athletes, and let's now take it outside of the athletic realm.
I literally run my classroom like a sports program. I tell my intro to CAD classes, you're on the freshman team, then there's the JV team, then there's the varsity team, then there's the all states. You know what I mean? Like how I run it.
Yeah. Any other questions I can answer? Or everybody think they're good?
I will add this, or at least repeat this. I think Steve said it first, that MITES has a wonderful opportunity here to really facilitate and help the CTE people, which I believe many of the people that are in CTE, I don't know how people are keeping their programs going if they don't have CTE funding anymore anyway. So probably the majority of the stakeholders here with MITES, they'd probably be helping a lot of them. So if we can pull together and you know, facilitate to that CTE stuff, I think that you'll see your membership and the stuff go up, because it would really be addressing directly what we are all going through.
Yep. Well, I will keep that in mind and bring that to the board as well, because I know that's an area of discussion.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm going to say you guys are good to go. Great Saturday session.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. And I'll get information out to you guys either middle of this week or end of the week.
Will you add the you know, the I don't think is anybody opposed to sharing their email? I mean, I see everybody's got their email there. We filled that that sheet out with our oh goodness, our code.
Yep.
So Dave, you have it. If you feel free to share my email, if you would, please. That way anybody that
Okay.
needs anything. I'm not going to say any of my stuff is any better. You probably have it, but you're more than welcome to you know, view everything I have, copy it, you know, whatever. I don't care. So
Okay. Is everybody good if I share all the emails?
Yeah, go ahead. I mean, I think most of us are just typing them in the chat right now. If anybody wants to throw it in there, you
I'll
know,
drop mine in.
anything we need for sure.
How would we share this stuff? That's one question I have. Like, who's Dave? Are you going to be the conduit for this?
Yeah, I could do that.
So
Actually,
I mean,
you know what? I will see if we can set up a share for like just design critique stuff off the MITES Google Drive.
Sweet.
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
awesome.
sounds great.
Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of your weekend.